All right, it's 8:01. We'll get started. Mark Crowther, Chair of the Department of Medicine. Welcome to Chair's Grand Rounds. A couple of business announcements before I introduce today's speaker. So the first of the business announcements is we are going to change, Madeline, Khaled and I are going to change the way we do Grand Rounds starting on January 1st. So Chair's Grand Rounds will go down to once every other month. And Madeline and Khaled are going to combine their rounds so that we have citywide rounds every single week instead of having competing rounds at HHS and St. Joe's. And so there'll be some restructuring that you'll see over the next couple of weeks as time passes. We do have a Chair's Grand Rounds in December, and I've asked Dr. Jack Hirsch if he would do a career retrospective, which I think would be really valuable given his seminal importance to the success. And we have January the 4th. Dr. Dawn Bodish is going to provide an update on the Firestone Institute, given that she recently took over the directorship of it. Today's speaker is Mr. Brady Wood. I'll give a quick introduction to Brady and the initiative, and then he's going to take over. So I've known Brady for probably close to 20 years. He was the director of public relations at St. Joe's, followed by the Niagara Health System, and then has moved on to do some other work. He's done a lot of consulting for the Department of Medicine over the last couple of years and has been critically important in us developing both the Communities of Practice Initiative, which he's going to talk about right now, as well as some critical communication work that he's been doing, and I'd like to thank him for that. And he'll tell you where he is right now because he's gone off on a little bit of a mission for the department to help us fulfill one of our obligations to education. Brady has two master's degrees, but mostly for the purposes of our work with him focuses on communications and crisis communications, and also just developing logical communication plans for businesses and for educational institutions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brady. If you have questions or concerns, please place them in the, I've got both the chat and the Q&A function open today, so please feel free to make use of those. I will be monitoring both, and then we'll have lots of time for questions and answers at the end if anybody wishes to ask any. So without further interruption, Brady, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you all for joining. I see we have 36 participants. That's remarkable, and I'll just start by saying what a privilege it's been to serve the department and be involved at McMaster. I have tremendous respect for the enormously important research and clinical work you folks do. Today I'm broadcasting from Krakow, Poland. So one of the files that I've been assisting with is the McMaster textbook of internal medicine, which is honestly a remarkable knowledge database. And it also includes constant of-the-moment updates on evidence-based clinical practice. So what was originally a physical textbook has evolved to be a online platform, both on the web and in an app. The reason for my involvement is sustainability. So the project has hit a point where it needs new revenue streams and needs to yet again reinvent itself. And it has a remarkably Byzantine structure because it is a collaboration between the McMaster Department of Medicine, the Polish Institute of Evidence-Based Medicine, and a Polish publisher who created the web and app and has been responsible for the textbooks called Medicina Praktyka. And so this work has brought me to Poland to work through some of the complex issues that the project's facing, and to determine a good path forward, which I think we found for sustainable revenue and user growth. So a little plug there, if you folks are not using the McMaster Textbook of Medicine app or website, I'd recommend you get on and register. It's a free resource, and many of you are already contributing, and many of your colleagues are contributing. And again, great pocket resource for evidence-based clinical practice that is born of McMaster and should have a worldwide following. I also thank your colleague on this Communities of Practice work, Dr. Teresa Chan, who I expect is online and has made huge contributions to this. And we'll speak about the other contributions people have made, but really wanted to acknowledge Teresa for her leadership here. So I will launch us into a discussion of the Communities of Practice. My objectives today were to inform you about this concept and the initiative and what we've implemented. Secondly, to update about the actual achievements of the 6 communities of practice, and some of them have also nested projects. We'll talk through their leadership and what the groups have undertaken and where they're at and what the future might bring. And then lastly, wanted to encourage your curiosity and participation. So I think these are, as we'll get into, interdisciplinary groups that cut across the subspecialties in the department and allow novel collaboration and also career acceleration for those of you that are interested in taking on greater leadership responsibility. So I see, I'm just going to check the chat periodically. Oh, Teresa says, yep, I'm here. Okay. I will monitor that sparingly, and I know Mark is checking that as well. So my involvement started, so for me, Mark mentioned that I'm a communications practitioner, but I really see it as a strategy practitioner. And I don't think much strategy happens without rigorous communication. So I think this is a new paradigm for strategy and communications, where it's not just simple marketing, convincing people to buy cigarettes, but you're really talking about how you navigate complex groups of individuals and make global impact that is recognized. And so I was engaged in 2020, and we were looking at ways to accelerate careers and build EDI as a core backbone of everything the department's doing. And I salute Mark in his absolutely ironclad commitment to that. Remarkable leader in this way, and I've learned a lot being with him and understanding my own privilege and the harms that it may cause. I think we're also looking again for those global impact opportunities. What can come from the department that again redistinguishes McMaster on the international stage? And Mark was also clear, we want unlikely collaborations. Let's get strange. Let's try something weird. Let's try to be experimental. And in the service of professional development for up and coming leaders. So that was also a large portion. And then a separate, so the communities of practice fulfills most of the above, and we'll talk through that. And then another project we undertook was streamlining important clerical and other work from the Council of Medicine, which is Mark's executive proper of the division directors and their work. And we made some headway with that, of course, mostly with the support of Annette Rosati, who's done remarkable work and is a great colleague. And so maybe I'll just turn to those were the objectives that led to that. And then here's where we probe the literature. The communities of practice idea came from some of our knowledge of the literature around this. So there is a good history of this in institutions of communities of practice that are almost like can be seen as a glee club where people from diverse backgrounds can cooperate and coordinate work on specific topics. And so we drew on that, and we found that the communities of practice fulfilled our criteria because it would be a way to bring forward early and mid-career leaders, build leadership teams that were distinguished by equity, diversity, and inclusion, and incorporate those principles into terms of reference and in a very truly meaningful way, not lip service, lived, authentic commitment. Again, the cross-pollination and interdisciplinary nature. And then we were really looking for this potential for innovation and what are the, how do we essentially incentivize and build groups with good background to perform and bring something forward that might actually hit that kind of national or international stage. And so we did an application process, and we were emphasizing multidisciplinary teams and asked those teams to identify their moonshot goal. What would they like to achieve through the initiative? We'll talk more about the moonshot goal in a second, but that is how we got started. We had a rigorous process, teams came forward, and we landed with 6 communities of practice. And we'll go through those one by one later in the presentation. So to date, I've been very successful in establishing some, I would say this is, again, everything we're doing seems to be in a bit of a matrix. And this, our administrative leadership of the communities of practice also takes the form of a matrix where these are the leaders and we're all taking on different functions, and it's not terribly hierarchical. And we have found a way to make this work whilst also, like the participants, having other responsibilities and core jobs. So Dr. Crowther, Dr. Chan, Annette as the director in the department, myself as an external advisor. We also have Mr. Bill Thal, and I'll be speaking about his contributions, but significant person in leadership. Have I frozen, or was that just maybe?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Thanks, Mark. We've also Mr. Brandon Van Dam has also been involved as of late, recent addition, and he's a manager of strategic initiatives and programs for the faculty. He also has a new role, which I don't have in front of me, but I believe he's going to continue his involvement. I think I saw Brandon's name on the call today, so he's joined us. And then Miss Carrie Hasnack in an administrative support and coordinating role, and she is really lifting a large amount of weight to keep these 6 groups running, as well as our larger objective around leadership development. I'll explain all that in a few moments. And so this is the parallel sort of org chart. So the Council of Medicine, again, continues to exist and be the de facto executive division directors reporting into Mark about the functions of their divisions. And the communities of practice taking on this role of a parallel entity that's goal and professional development oriented activity, and a matrix organization with open-ended group events, leadership development, more mid-career, but also a second resource to the Department of Leadership that can also weigh in and participate in some of the executive functioning. So I think a very dynamic, interesting structure. So I will talk through, we established, I think, what I would say are 3 performance foundations of the group. And where we started was with, this is one of my favorite books. I think I expect everyone, all of the 52 participants on this call are probably already very good at getting things done. But this is a remarkable book to align your activities with your most important goals and cut through the noise of our day-to-day work that can often derail and distract us from the most important things. And so we started the group's work with trying to identify what we call these moonshot goals. And so the NASA example was when Kennedy became president, NASA had like a tome of their priorities. You know, this was like a phone book of things that they said they were going to do. And it was, again, to sort of use the word Byzantine twice in a presentation, but it was Byzantine and sprawling. And Kennedy had them refine their goal to, we will, by the end of the decade, send a man to the moon and get him home safely. And so that's where the notion of a moonshot goal came from. And essentially it's a SMART goal, so specific, one that's measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So we instructed the groups on how to write these goals, how to act on the lead measures, the things that are most likely to bring success, keep a scoreboard, and create a cadence of accountability. So rhythm is key. Everything we do is rhythmic meetings on a reliable cycle where people know the kind of accountability they bring forward to the meeting. It's something that I practice in my consultancy, allows me to probably be more effective and have a more sprawling bit of work that I do than I could if I didn't have those kind of rhythms as well. So if folks haven't read this book, I think this is one of, you know, my top 5. Will always be on my bookshelf, always good to go back to, and hope that's helpful. But this was the first kind of foundational performance foundation for the groups. And so we did talk about this, but the matrix organization is important too. One of my mentors, Dr. Kevin Smith, who's now the CEO at UHN, he did his PhD on how a matrix organization, which was flat with ambiguous accountability, led to greater outputs in cardiac research institutes. So the flatness of the organization allows for collaboration. It's not really hierarchical. The groups have some shared leadership. It allows for much greater shared perspective because people aren't speaking from the perspective of title. Leaders could be in and out of the COP structure without confusing their roles. So a division director could also head a COP, but could also be subordinate to someone leading the COP in that setting. It also has what I call an extracurricular vibe. Sorry to use millennial language. I'm just barely a millennial. But again, it removes sort of an anxious urgency. So, and again, I think through the pandemic, heard from some, this was kind of lifeline kind of project. So something that was able, people were able to relax into and not feel that it was so pressing in the chaos of the pandemic. And I would say kudos to all the groups. We have managed to keep the wheels on and not only do that, but grow this initiative through a very challenging couple of years. We were one of the first groups to resume in-person activities and continue that work. And so I think, again, and out of all of this and this matrix, we are developing a unique culture for this initiative and some unique insights. And so this is just an example of how the matrix could function with different divisions being represented in the same COP. This is really the matrix that I think is most interesting about the COP, and I give credit to Teresa and Mr. Bill Thal, who Bill really designed this chart, and really that it shows that we have, and we'll go through the list of the different COPs. But we have 6 COPs. One of them is Leadership in Medicine COP. The Leadership in Medicine COP underwrites the work of the other COPs by enabling them through leadership training, and that comes up in our bi-monthly meetings now, and we're having a more rigorous leadership training component, which I think will eventually lead to some actual credentialing, which we're working through. And then this also shows, I think, how all of the COPs could kind of overlap. So I think if I made this a 3D model, it'd be more like a crystal, like you can have collaborations between 5 COPs simultaneously. We're kind of just starting to open up threads where that can happen. And they're driving these important outcomes at the top, which is the individual performance of each COP against their moonshot goal, these collaboration outputs, and then also the leadership track of the individuals. And so the foundation too around the leadership component is the Bridging Leaders program. So hopefully most know about this, but this is a bit of a plug for Bridging Leaders for those who are on the call. The Bridging Leaders program is through McMaster. Teresa and colleagues are leading this. And essentially it is a leadership training program that is substantial and that we've made available to the COP leaders. So I think most, if not all, COP leaders have now achieved Bridging Leaders with partly with support from the department. And again, this is another way of formalizing leadership as underpinning this work. And Foundation 3 that we've brought to bear is with Bill Thal, who is from Leeds, Canada. And Leeds is the new addition to our leadership framework, in addition to Bridging Leaders, which is this Leeds framework, which is widely known in healthcare, and has these components of leading oneself, engaging others, achieving results, developing coalitions, and driving systems transformation. And so it's a training framework, and we've just started with our first presentation to this effect at a recent COP meeting, but we're now building in the structure of leads to the COPs. Our next session will be on the coaching dimension of the leads framework and its importance. And we'll continue from there, that every 2 months, the leadership will have some engagement with leads. And again, we are hoping that this will also lead to some formal credentialing. And so, and again, this is basically a list of some of the achievements that we've had in terms of our professional development activities. So one of our first ones back from actually, maybe I'll start at the most recent one. Again, we did CEO of Self, so governing and running your own life and yourself with Bill, and that was an introduction to leads, so that just happened. Our next one, I believe, we'll have actual leaders from the COP presenting on the coaching component. Previously in June, we had a really excellent external speaker, Jennifer Hagen. So she's from Team Trust and did a remarkable job teaching us about the complexities of leading with millennial colleagues and these cultural differences, and really impactful to hear about, and also not hear about kind of, oh, darn those millennials, but more that this is there are cultural differences, and that we have to be prepared for the future to work with colleagues that have different expectations, and colleagues that are less likely to have the endurism of our previous generations. And I'm certainly guilty of this, thinking that so some of these inconveniences that we've all lived with for decades are things that this generation won't tolerate, and that means we need to restructure. And then previous to that, we did a really remarkable event in September. We had to be masked, but did it at the David Braley Center. And there are YouTube videos where essentially we grabbed from the minds of the community of practice leaders, their knowledge about different dimensions of leadership, and sort of ran it. It was run like a talk show. And so we had high quality filming and talking about best practices, but really a remarkable opportunity to hear from colleagues. And again, what also stood out, the EDI component of this and the young career acceleration really shone through in terms of the composition of the folks on the stage, the ideas. So really remarkable events. And again, we can share it after, but those YouTube videos are available from that event. And so I'm going to just go through some of the things that we've achieved, and then we'll go through the individual COPs. So we got that admin support in place, and it's driving results. The groups are proceeding. We have cross-disciplinary collaborations going that are seen as extremely valuable. We have young leaders who are participating and experiencing really, truly some career acceleration that's in part driven by their work with us. And we're expanding and starting to think about expanding the COP membership beyond the Department of Medicine. And also, how could we do it beyond McMaster? Is there any reason why someone from another institution couldn't be a part of one of the 6 communities of practice? And again, we did return to some in-person professional development as early as September 2021. The members are reporting in. We have an integrated approach with this accelerated leadership development. And again, I also know Dr. Jonathan Sherbino has also been hugely helpful in contributing to the body of knowledge and our approach to leadership development. We've got our budgeting process run by Annette, EDI gains being very evident, each COP making strides toward their goal. And we'll also have a substantial weighty website of both resources and showing what we've achieved. And so now I'm going to go through each of the COPs themselves. And so I'm starting here with our entrepreneurship COP. And I'm having trouble seeing my full screen because of all these Zoom things. And here we go. Okay. So the leaders of the entrepreneurship MEDEX COP are Dr. Mark Larche, Ms. Sarah Lal, and Dr. Jeremy Hirota. And their moonshot goal is a very substantial moonshot, which is to incubate $1 billion valuation company out of McMaster. And so far, I think they've had some tremendous achievements, but 2 that stand out are the establishment of an entrepreneur in residence program. So this is to bring in an entrepreneur with presumably with a medical background who's been successful and that can contribute to conversations and mentoring within the department with a view to entrepreneurship. So that's very exciting. That's in the works, so stay tuned for some more news. And then also the Biggest Leap Award. So there's an award with some resources tied to it to acknowledge someone who's done remarkable work to drive entrepreneurial activity. And then again, Brandon Van Dam is a strategic leader in the faculty who's also joined and is contributing his leadership. So those are some pretty remarkable achievements in this first sort of year of operations. And then there's also an award coming up, the LEAP Awards, with cash and in-kind contributions. That's sort of the next chunk toward this overall moonshot goal. And the next group we have is the Quality and Patient Safety Community of Practice. So our leaders are Dr. Seychelle Johanna, Dr. Anna Ahmed, Dr. Dominic Mertz, and Ms. Claire O'Connor. And I think that is our first participant, Claire, being outside of department person. And their focus is on quality and patient safety. And so much of this work does happen in hospitals. This is at a different level, looking at workshops, creativity, and bringing a flavor of essentially getting to a world-renowned quality and patient safety conference. So that is their goal. And so they did have a really excellent symposium in October with a success of international reach and 258 registrants across multiple disciplines. And I'll show you on the next slide a little bit more about that. And their next contribution to this world-renowned conference is they're going to continue membership meetings and events, and then a hybrid symposium in 2023 with in-person. So this is growing incrementally, but with a lot of force behind it. And so here, this slide is just a breakdown of the attendees of the QUIPS symposium, which was just completed and got great reviews from the participants. So 258 people with an international flavor. So kudos to the group for that. And then nested under some of our COPs, we have projects. So there is a high-risk obstetrics project that feeds into the quality COP. The project leaders are Doctors Gundy and Matthew, and they've really made some great progress as well. So they've piloted a combined maternal fetal medicine, obstetric medicine preconception clinic at Mumsy. They're targeting subspecialties for complex care rounds, medicine journal club with quarterly meetings. So lots of traction on this one, lots of great work by two already very busy clinicians. And up next, they're going to be identifying McMaster practice health teams and midwifery groups for educational outreach initiatives. And they're going to engage and formalize their network of medical and obstetric providers to facilitate clinical research and academic collaboration. And this is all with a goal to transform the care provided to people with medical conditions in pregnancy in Hamilton. So across the chain of their interface with the health system, making that clean and high quality as possible. And then I see from Teresa says here in the Q&A, interesting, both leadership programs are based on the LEADS framework. Oh, this was from earlier, my apologies. No, I thought these were new chats. I'll skip the chat for the moment. I don't think it contributes on this slide. And then the leadership COP, which I also noted, underpins much of the work that the COP is aspiring to do when it comes to career acceleration. Their moonshot goal is a world-renowned medical leadership program. And if you know Teresa, you know Samita, you know Simmerpi, you know Sandra and Tim. These are all extraordinarily driven people who absolutely will make this happen. And they've had some leadership and network meetings. I know a lot of planning is going on. They've launched the 5th cohort of the Bridging Leaders program. So a great many of you have already completed that program around leadership. And again, this is how Bill Thal, to some degree, became introduced to us both through Teresa and Mark, to bring this wealth of knowledge and this LEADS framework, which is a world-renowned framework in building medical leadership. And so their next chunk toward the world-renowned medical leadership program is expanding the Bridging Leaders program to other non-McMaster faculty like U of T. And I think based on the price and the value, I think this is something that will catch fire and be very successful. The Education and Innovation Initiative, also led by Teresa with Sarah Lal, who's also from and this is where you see this kind of cross-pollination and collaboration, she's from the Entrepreneurship COP as well, and with Dr. Luthra. This is advancing teaching and scholarship and launching a world-renowned Future of Education conference is their goal. You'll see here these folks have had some very significant virtual events related to leadership in education scholarship, innovative teaching strategies. And I also see here mentorship Who Me, an interactive virtual community discussion. And so their next approach is survey the medical community to engage membership for a needs assessment around education, a virtual event focused on educational scholarship, and an in-person pre-conference event focused on an area of interest within the education leadership pillar, for example, EDI. So again, remarkable group, fast-paced, getting a lot done in the last year of activity. Our virtual care group, again, another exciting and obviously with COVID and beyond, very timely group. So this is led by Dr. Zena Demetropoulos and Dr. Guzman. And their goal is to establish a center of excellence in virtual care at McMaster and advance virtual care best practices. And so if we could do that, I think, again, potential for global reach, potential to put McMaster and Department of Medicine on the map. And they're developing standardized approaches to ambulatory virtual care, patient education materials, and supporting the clarification of effects related to these funding changes around virtual care. Something very important that our publicly funded health system is really grappling with. And so they will continue to move forward with research and other foundational work toward this notion of a center of excellence with broad understanding and seen as a global contributor. And then I'm just going to check the chat again. Can you mention Sandra Romelli's name? Yes. So Sandra Romelli, she was mentioned on one of the previous slides. Very significant health leader, done remarkable work, a true strategist and driven person. And she's actually contributed to many of these initiatives and is greatly worthy of mention. So I hope you folks are aware of Sandra's work, and she's been very involved in much of the work of the department that reaches your radar for sure. The next community of practice is the clinical improvement sciences. So I love this one in concept, and I think it's probably the most challenging one we are up against, although I guess building a billion-dollar company is also very challenging. But essentially this is bringing together minds from cross-disciplinary functions to address any intractable problems in medicine. And so these are those kind of really challenging clinical issues that have not been easy to solve. So their moonshot goal is publications of scalable methods of multidisciplinary approaches to intractable problems. So they've started what I would say is a lab-based approach, doing clinical improvement sciences projects to test the overall concept. And so the leaders of the overall clinical improvement sciences are Dr. Verhosek, Dr. Sean Mondo, and Dr. Ted Zenedemetropoulos, sorry, Ted. And then underneath that, the project is the Substance Use Disorder Center of Excellence. And so this project is reporting in similar to the maternal health project in the quality COP. That's led by Dr. O'Shea, Dr. Martin, Dr. Claire Liu, and Dr. Claire Bodkin. And they're planning a resident-led COP supported conference in the fall. And they did update their names from addictions to substance use to reflect, I think, some empathy considerations and also just the more modern language in this area. And then the other project that is also testing this approach is transitions to care in pediatric and adult divisions of rheumatology. So chronic care patients that are moving between pediatric and adult divisions, how are they better supported where there have been gaps? So this group, and I think many of the groups are calling for increased participation, but this group for sure is looking for new leaders that find this notion of looking at intractable problems in medicine interesting. Really encourage you to get a hold of Madeline or other leaders here. They are going to align these and evaluate the projects and leverage group expertise to move forward care in Hamilton, especially around folks that have substance use disorders and other challenges. And to be continued, more will be heard from this group because it's a remarkable angle on many problems. And so I think that draws largely to the end of the presentation of the individual groups. And this is just to let folks know what we are looking at in the next year. So we're going to further move towards a formal leadership credentialing. So we've gone through that, the underpinning of a performance framework, the Bridging Leaders program, incorporating leads in a formal way, and exciting leadership training on a fairly regular rhythm, 4 to 6 times a year. We'll have significant events. And again, those bi-monthly meetings are going to be focused on primarily professional development rather than status updates. On the status update front, we're trying to develop new systems for performance acceleration and management and discussion. So instead of coming to a group meeting where you spend an hour or two just listening to each group give 10 minutes, what's a better way of interacting and talking? So about achievements. So it might be individual meetings dedicated to one COP, but we are going to look at that while also being very cognizant of the amount of time. You can imagine the time that folks have put into this in addition to their remarkably busy clinical and leadership lives. Many of the names on this list, I'm not sure how they've done what they've done, and again, salute everyone there. We're going to try to expand the membership, as I mentioned, beyond medicine, and our next bi-monthly meeting is on the books for December 19th. And so that's where we're at with the communities of practice. I think in a very short time, we've built out 6 remarkable groups. And I think I would be happy to answer any comments or questions. Mark, am I okay for time? Have I gone over, under?
No, you're great for time, Brady. I just thanks very much. So I'd also like to take a second to thank Brady, who has put in, as you can tell, an enormous amount of energy into this, mostly just out of the intellectual curiosity associated with it. Dr. Jones asked how we were paying for all this, and I must say that this has been ridiculously inexpensive and a testament to the immense amount of time and energy that people are willing to put into projects that they find interesting and intriguing, and without the target of financial gain for themselves or others. It's been really inspiring to watch people work on a lot of these initiatives, and Brady really has been the orchestra leader, along with Carrie more recently, just keeping the wheels on the bus in terms of everything continuing along. Brady, we don't have any questions right now, and I suspect we won't have a great number of them, but I will just make a few comments from my perspective. So the first part of my comments are around leadership development. Someone asked the question, why are we doing leadership development if we want a flat leadership model? And in fact, to be quite honest, the leadership development training is to accomplish exactly the opposite. It is not a CEO training school. It is designed to allow people to understand their capacity, their capabilities, to build their capacity and capabilities so that they can take a leadership role, as Teresa said in the question and answer, from any seat in the House. And it's been immensely successful so far since I became chair 5.5 years ago. We've put, I think Annette and I counted them, 75 people through some degree or program of formal leadership development, including many through the Bridging Leadership Program, which you heard about a few times. And there's no intention of creating 75 division directors or department chairs. The intention is all about giving people the tools that they need to be as successful as they can possibly be. And we're already seeing that. And I think, I don't know if Madeline or Smita are on right now, but Madeline has become the chief of medicine at St. Joe's, and Smita was the chair of the MAC and now has a very important role in the senior administration of HHS. And I think if you ask both of them, they both took at least some inspiration from leadership development training that they took early in their careers, which helped them to better understand their capacity and their capabilities. So we have a lot of leadership development opportunities that are available through the department at multiple different venues. Annette and I maintain a running list of everybody who's expressed an interest in attending leadership development. And what we do is, as opportunities present themselves, we slot people into those. So there's a bit of a waiting list at the moment. I'd like to thank Annette, who has put also an immense amount of energy into this program and made sure that we weren't spending large amounts of money on it, but rather we're carefully managing our money. Any expenditures we do incur that have any footprint in the department in the practice plan are also monitored by the finance committee, so everybody can rest assured that I'm not spending hundreds of thousands or millions of your dollars on these projects. With respect to where this goes in the future, I think this has been enormously successful. We've had a lot of interest from the broader faculty about getting other departments and faculties involved, and we're more than happy to do that. So we do have some outreach going on, and if people want to join, there's also a parallel initiative developing at the faculty in communities of practice, which I think is spawned by our work. It has been also very successful, and probably at some point in the next 12 months, once the dust settles on the various COVID issues and COVID catch-up, we'll probably consider maybe making a limited call for 1 or 2 new communities of practice, because these have been around for a while and I think are just about at the point of being self-sustaining and long-term foci for the department. I'd also, again, Brady called out a couple of people. I'd like to thank Teresa for an immense amount of work and energy in this, and also Sandra, who was involved foundationally, and for me personally, is probably the person in the department who's been most responsible for me understanding the importance of much of this work, because it was not apparent to me. So I'll end my comments there. I don't have any, I don't see any questions or answers that are open. Teresa's made a few comments in the chat function. Please have a look at those. If there's no last minute questions, I'd like to thank Brady for taking the time to join us from Poland. As he said, He did a nice plug at the start for the McMaster Textbook of Medicine. If you're not aware of that resource, you should be. It's a remarkable work product by many members of the department, including many who are online right now. And I'd like to thank everybody for doing that. And if there aren't any questions, we will end a bit early today, and I'll ask everyone to please look forward to rounds next week that will be run at St. Joe's and HHS, and then our next Chairs Grand Rounds will happen in December. Thanks very much, everyone, and have a good morning. Thank you.
Thank you. I still see a few participants here. I am going to log off now after I stop the recording.